Good morning, and we're just about to kick off for the next session on water scarcity. There's certainly no scarcity at this conference. There's plenty of water around the room. If you want to get some water, help yourself. But this session is a very important session. We're delighted to have with us two speakers. Before I introduce them, just want to say something briefly about the issue here. The scarcity of clean, potable water is a potential trigger point for future crises worldwide, and it's therefore vital to bring in technology which is available and affordable. But what are the technologies available in the market? And sometimes it's said that the next world war will not be over oil, but it might be over water. And we're going to approach this session this morning not from the perspective of risk, but from the other side of the coin, the glass half empty, half full, which is opportunity. And we're going to focus on a solutions-based approach this morning to look at not just what are the challenges, but what are some of the available options and opportunities for us in that area. So my name is Arif Zaman. I'm from the Muslim Council of Britain, the delegation from the UK, and I'm delighted to be emceeing this session. I'm just going to introduce now the first of our two speakers, who is Saran Kaba-Jones, the founder and the CEO of Face Africa. And I'll let her say more about that and tell us more about some of the solutions that we should be considering in terms of challenging the area of water scarcity. Karen.
Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our Masterclass session on tackling water scarcity through cutting-edge technology. I'd like to thank the World Islamic Economic Forum for inviting me to be a part of this conference. My co-panelists, Michael and I, have an exciting session in store for you, and I hope we will leave you today with some valuable insights on the water crisis and what can be done to end it. To do this, I first wanted to talk about the nearly 1 billion people worldwide that lack access to safe water supply. And even more specifically, the 350 million people in Africa that are affected every day. It's a grim picture. The world water crisis is one of the largest health crises of our time today. And the health implications are staggering. 2 million people every year die due to waterborne diseases. To put that in perspective, that's the entire population of Dubai dying every single year. Most of these deaths occur in children under the age of 5. The World Bank estimates that water-related illnesses kill more children in Africa under age 5 than HIV/AIDS, malaria, and measles combined. But the issue of water is not just limited to health. It has other serious implications. Education. Water scarcity in developing countries prevent many young children, especially girls, from attending school and receiving an education. Gender equality. Women and girls are disproportionately burdened by scarcity of safe water supply. Women spend around 60% of each day walking to collect water, which translates to approximately 110 million work hours every single day. This means they have less time available for education or income-generating activities. Productivity. The UN estimates that sub-Saharan Africa alone loses 40 billion potential work hours every year collecting water. Imagine the effect that has on the continent's overall productivity. And studies have shown that the rate of return on spending on water and sanitation, which is another major area of concern that affects over 1 billion people worldwide, but we'll talk about that another time. But studies have shown that the rate of return on spending on water can exceed other public investments such as infrastructure, transport, health, or education. Peace and security, environmental degradation, pollution, and climate change, coupled with population growth, have led to increasing competition for declining water supply. This has led some analysts to estimate that water conflicts will become a lot more common in the near future. We're already starting to see this play out in parts of the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. In essence, the issue of water is tied to every single Millennium Development Goal, from education to health to security. So what is being done, and is it enough? And what more can we do? Clearly, not enough is being done. Although we're said to have met the MDG target for water, almost 1 billion people around the world still lack access to safe water supply. What more can we do? There's a lot more we can do, and this is where we have to apply out-of-the-box thinking and some level of innovation. What we do know is that government alone cannot solve the water crisis. In fact, like most issues, governments tend to focus on top-down approaches to solving social issues, which does not always work. Is privatization of water by for-profit corporations the answer? There have been a lot of debates recently on whether we should turn water into a commodity instead of a public good. In my opinion, that is not the answer either, because in many parts of the world, it would further alienate the poor, leaving those who are unable to pay without adequate access. Should we leave the issue of solving the water crisis to the nonprofit sector, the development sector? Absolutely not. They have been at it for decades, and we still don't see any meaningful or sustainable impact. In fact, in my experience, most systems built by the development sector lay broken today. So what is my solution? What exactly am I proposing? I'm not an inventor like my good friend Michael here. I don't have a hip and sexy new technology up my sleeves. But what I do know from experience and from working in this sector for 6 years is that the water crisis is very real, but it's also very solvable. In Liberia, for example, a country of 4 million people, it will take roughly $40 million to solve the entire country's water crisis. That's $10 per person. How can we go about doing this? By implementing simple, low-cost community and household-based water solutions that bypass large multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects. Imagine piping all of rural Africa will cost billions of dollars and take decades, or maybe never. Billions that governments don't have. Now you ask, what technology do we go about using? The good news is there are technologies and solutions out there already. I, for one, I'm excited about the one that Michael will talk about today and demonstrate to us today. But the technologies and solutions are available. We just need the resources, the funding to get them to the communities and the individuals that need them the most. What I can say is that there's no one-size-fits-all technology or solution to solving the water crisis. There's no one solution that works for every country or community. Context drives which water technology is appropriate for an area. Physical factors like geographical terrain play a major part, but also so do cultural factors and water sources. In rural, remote sub-Saharan Africa, where my organization works, there are 2 major types of water technologies that are appropriate for those regions. We found that those solutions build on existing resources and tend to be the most effective and sustainable. Rainwater catchments are one of them. Liberia and many parts of sub-Saharan Africa get a great amount of rainfall throughout the year. So setting up rainwater catchments where the gutters and rooftop direct the flow of rainfall into a tank is an effective and sustainable solution. Hand-dug wells. Hand-dug wells and pumps, where you dig a well up to 15 meters by hand to reach aquifers below. In Liberia, which is an extremely water-rich country, the water tables are quite shallow and allows for hand digging to get to the natural water source below ground. Each of our wells are purified and outfitted with a manual hand pump. But there are other solutions as well, as I mentioned before. Gravity-fed systems, for example, where the force of gravity feeds water into a community from an elevated source. water purification systems, which can be installed to treat and remove contaminants from existing systems, biosand filters, where layers of sand and microbacterial film filter out contaminants, spring protections, where a system captures and safely stores pure water from a natural spring. And you have some really cool and innovative technologies like this one out of Peru, where the University of Engineering and Technology has designed a billboard, a huge public billboard that creates clean and safe drinking water from atmospheric humidity. So in conclusion, there are lots of technologies out there. And overall, there exists a wide range of cost-effective, manageable, and innovative solutions to help communities in producing clean, disease-free water. Ultimately, what it comes down to is using technology that's appropriate for each individual community's needs. For the technology to be effective, it must conform to environmental, ethical, cultural, social, and economic aspects of each community. In Liberia, where we work, we make sure to use local materials, local labors, and employ technology where parts are readily available in those areas. Additionally, it's important to get government buy-in and the will to be able to implement some of these technologies. Donor agencies and technological solutions must be mindful also of gender disparities in access to water because, as I mentioned earlier, women and girls are burdened the most when it comes to the issue of water scarcity. So we must make sure not to exclude women from development or resource management projects. If this can be done, if we can employ existing technologies, if we can find the resources and the funding to support these technologies with sufficient funding and resources, it is feasible to end the water crisis in our lifetime. Thank you, and I will pass the mic on to Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. I'm hoping this is going to work, okay? Technology boys.
More than 11,000 people are now thought to have been killed in southern Asia.
Hundreds of people are feared to have died. Many more are missing.
I invented Lifesaver because I got angry. I was sitting down at my dinner table, Christmas 2004, and watching the news. And there was the Asian tsunami rolling in on TV. And the people were being forced to flee to the hills, to run, and either had to drink contaminated water or face death. You know, and that really stuck with me. And a few months later, Hurricane Katrina slammed into the side of America.
Katrina is now in the Gulf of Mexico and growing stronger rapidly.
The damage here along the Gulf Coast is catastrophic.
And I thought, well, okay, look, here's a first world nation, you know, they've got to be able to do something. First day, nothing. Second day, nothing. And you know, it took 5 days to get water to the Superdome. And I saw people on TV shooting each other for TV sets and water. And I just thought, I've got to do something. So I spent a lot of time over the next few weeks and months in my garage and also in my kitchen, much to the annoyance of my wife. But eventually, after many failed prototypes, I finally came up with this, the Lifesaver bottle. Sarah and I are here today to talk to you about tackling water scarcity through cutting-edge technology. To do this, I would like to talk to the problem through the lens of personal water security. Today, 1.8 billion people have no personal water security. They are the water impoverished, the subjugated poor, forced to eke out a meagre existence, forced to gamble with the lives of themselves and their families every time they take a drink. Imagine if the water served here today was like that. Well, statistics would say that half of you now would be suffering with diarrhea. So why? Why in the 21st century do we suffer this problem? I believe there are two reasons. Firstly, for most of us, when we think through the problems of water security, they seem too large and complicated to solve. Secondly, for policymakers tasked with solving the problem, the only tools available to them are the large, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure projects. Applying these macroeconomic tools, however, requires the raising of such vast quantities of capital as to make it virtually impossible for them to solve the problem. Many of you in the audience know the problem only too well. So the imperative is still there. People want and need safe drinking water. The urge to solve the problem does not diminish, and the Millennium Goals have provided extra impetus, as Sharon has talked about. Faced with the prospect of never being able to raise the capital required, some policymakers and governments are now apparently resolving the problem by exploring the ambiguity of the English language. On the 6th of March 2012, the UN proudly announced that the Millennium Development Goal for drinking water had been met. Over 2 billion people now had access to improved drinking water sources, they said. However, when the Millennium Goal was set in 2000, it was quite specific. It was to halve the proportion of people without access to safe drinking water. What most people failed to spot in the UN announcement was the subtlety of language change that had taken place between the setting of the goal in 2000 and the 2012 announcement. I had a postcard on my wall from a guy called Ashley Brilliant. It read, "To be sure of hitting the target, shoot first, and whatever you hit, call the target." It got me to wondering whether those in the UN had a similar postcard stuck to their wall. So, is there an answer? Is there an answer to such a complex and overwhelming problem? Yes, I believe there is. And the answer lies not in the macroeconomic, but in the microeconomic world. By turning the problem on its head and looking at it from the consumer's viewpoint, the answer to water security starts to emerge. Personal water security is defined as the reliable availability of an acceptable quantity and quality of drinking water. For the most part, consumers have an acceptable quantity of water, else they would, sadly, be dead. My previous slide showed Mother Nature delivering the water. She's leapfrogged the need for prohibitively expensive infrastructure projects, and her system has been installed for free. But there are two parts to this water security equation, and to solve the equation, we need to make the water safe to drink. And at Lifesaver, this is what we do. Lifesaver products are designed to work without the need for chemicals, light or power. Our technology removes all bacteria and viruses to produce safe, sterile drinking water faster than you can drink it. Lifesaver meets all recognized international standards, and including those of the World Health Organization and the US Environmental Protection Agency. Now, I can see by the look of you that some of you are quite skeptical about this technology. So I thought I'd like to give you a bit of a demonstration. So over here is a fish tank with some water. There's a little bug crawling around there. I don't know where he came from. Now, most water in the middle of a flood zone wouldn't look like this, and this is from one of the taps here in the hotel. So I've gone and got some bits and pieces that I want to add into the water, because if you're in the middle of a flood zone in Bangladesh, for instance, or Pakistan, your water doesn't look like this. So I'm just going to add some bits and pieces I got from my garden. Put that in there. Now, I've gone and got some water from my pond as well, because when you're in a flood zone, all the sewage come up. So I'm just going to add this, excuse me, just so it's not chocolate or anything. How about it smell? No, it's not chocolate. Okay. So I'm just going to add that in there. Okay. That's starting to look a bit more like the water you might get in the middle of a flood zone. However, there's more than that in a flood zone. So I had a word with my mate Alfie. He's my lovely dog. I told him I was coming to this presentation. He said, well, you know, I'll give you something to bring along, to put into the water. Unfortunately, your customs officials are quite good at the job, and they wouldn't let me bring it through. So I went in search of a camel. I figured that's got to be easy to find, right? I couldn't find a camel in the UAE. Unbelievable. But I found the next best thing. Me and my friend Jalla. I pulled a few strings and was able to get to the Godolphin stable. And I told Jalla my problem. And Jalla said, well, I can help you with that. I have to say this is the most expensive horsepower I've ever used. This is a multi-million-dollar horse here. But in the middle of a flood zone, you're going to get this in your water. Try not to get it on my shirt. Now that is starting to look more like the water you're going to find in the middle of a flood zone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my first product, but we have others to show you. This is the first thing I invented called a lifesaver bottle. And it works really simply. It's just filtration. There's no chemicals, there's no power. And I'm going to mix up some of this water. Make sure to get some of that poop in there. Poop's okay to say, right? Okay, there we go. And I'm going to pour that in there. Would anybody like a drink yet? Okay. Now it works really simply. Put the base back on. And I'm going to give it a few pumps. That's all it takes. Now, stage management is really worried about me getting this on the carpet. Aren't you? So I need a glamorous assistant. You're going to try this. Now, nothing's happening yet. It's still dirty water inside here. But as soon as I pop the teat here, clean, sterile drinking water is going to come out. Ready? There we go. Safe, sterile drinking water. Cheers. Come on, Saren. Come on. This is the moment of truth for Saren.
Cheers.
You can see this wasn't rehearsed. Okay, so what does it taste of?
Clean water.
Clean water, because that's all it is. It's clean, sterile drinking water. We've taken the poop out, we've taken the viruses out, we've taken the bacteria out, and we're just left with sterile, clean drinking water. Now, after the bottle, we invented the jerry can. So this will do 20,000 litres of clean drinking water. 20,000 litres. That's enough for a family of 4 for 4 to 5 years. Pop the water in, give it a few pumps, out comes clean drinking water. And then in conjunction with Oxfam, we invented the Lifesaver Cube, designed specifically to go on airplanes and help in rapid onset emergencies. And these have been used around the world, particularly in the Philippines, which happened recently, where tens of thousands of these were shipped out to the Philippines, and we saved many, many lives. Thank you. So Lifesaver technology is used throughout the world, as I mentioned, in rapid onset emergencies and for long-term infrastructure replacement programs. In rapid onset emergencies, NGOs and agencies use our products to provide instant water security to those who have had it taken from them. For long-term infrastructure replacement programs, the real focus of my talk here today, forward-thinking policymakers are just now learning of this new approach and are beginning to apply it. This modern way of thinking is best exemplified by the work we are doing with the Malaysian government and our partners on the island of Borneo, using our latest technology, the Lifesaver C2, or M1 as it's known in Malaysia. The C2 will process 2 million litres of clean drinking water from rain before any replacement parts are required. It is a long-term permanent solution, providing clean drinking water to villages and communities. Let me show you what personal water security looks like. Perhaps more importantly, let me show you what it feels like.
Before Lifesaver arrived in the village, we used rain and river water for our daily use. We used to work very far to collect firewood to heat the water up before we drink it. We've been do this for years before Lifesaver.
It has made life easier. There's no need to collect water and boil the water or to collect firewood. I like to say on behalf of whole community, thank you for installing the Lifesaver system here in my village.
This is typical. The heavens have opened up. This is Mother Nature's worldwide water delivery system. It's amazing. All we've got to do is make it clean. And how do we do that? With a Lifesaver M1.
At first, when it was installed, I was a little curious.
As you can see, we've tied into the guttering system here on this longhouse. The rainwater comes down this pipe, transfers into this first holding tank. This is where any sediment settles out before it travels down here into the Lifesaver M1. And this is where the harder technology sits. It's simple, really. There's 3 filters and 2 hand pumps. The filters are designed to take out all the nasties, the bacteria, the viruses. The hand pumps are designed to put pressure into the M1 tank. The pressure forces the water through the membranes. Turn the tap, and you've got safe, sterile drinking water. Cheers.
We feel so happy now, and then we are very healthy now.
All the people is very grateful because we have that Lifesaver treat water.
Dengan adanya Lifesaver, with fresh water from Lifesaver, we can ensure all the young generation will have fresh water. The whole village is very happy.
Our philosophy is one of collaboration. With our partners, the Malaysian government, the C2 was conceived, designed, manufactured, tested, validated, and installed in less than 18 months. Manufacturing and other local employment was created through skills and knowledge transfer
delivering water security to over 1 million Malaysians permanently. Of the C2s installed so far, families are reporting that they have either reduced their spend on bottled gas by 50%, saved 4.5 hours a day gathering and chopping firewood, or saved $180 per annum on buying bottled water. These benefits were recognised after only a matter of weeks and have created an appetite for more. We have seen significant rises in the quantity of water used for such tasks as washing vegetables, soaking rice, personal hygiene, and mixing infant milk formula. In Colombia, Lifesaver, in conjunction with the government agency ANSPI, are running a project in the Putumayo region. ANSPI are responsible for the welfare of 1.2 million families living in extreme poverty, those on less than $1.25 a day. This project has been running for 18 months now, with some impressive results. The doctor visits are down by 90%. Medical bills down by 90%. Nutritional input increased by 25%. The purchasing of bottled gas in this region down by 65%. And perhaps the most impressive of all, disposable income up by 90%. And I want to tell you a quick story. I was in the Putumayo region last year, and I went to visit a house of a lady who had this technology for the past year. And I'll shorten my story a bit. She was very proud of it. She shared it with 3 other families. And in the end, she said, would I like a piece of fruit? And I said, that would be lovely, thank you very much. And she went to the corner of the room, and there was a brand spanking new, shiny silver fridge. She opened it up, and inside was some fresh meat and some vegetables and the fruit, and she gave me the fruit. And through the translator, I said, look, please don't misunderstand me and don't think I'm rude. But the government classes you as being in extreme poverty. How come you can afford a brand new fridge? And she said, I got it from the money I saved from having Lifesaver. Pretty impressive impact. So how could you make an impact? How could you, many of whom are policymakers here today, ensure water security for your nation? A legacy of water security for your country is within your grasp. It just requires you to think differently. Malaysia are almost there. I believe Prime Minister Najib will have ended water poverty in his country within this parliamentary term, delivering personal water security to all the citizens of Malaysia. You see, people are the machine. If they are sick, they can't work. Fix the machine, and the machine will grow the economy. Governments today are struggling with the huge cost of water infrastructure projects, but help put the means of water production in the hands of those that need it, and you have a powerful force for good. The foundation of a virtuous circle, leading to, amongst other things, improvements in health, productivity, wealth, and education. I predict this will underpin the next industrial revolution in the developing world. This revolution will happen. Ultimately, it will be supported by consumers purchasing their own personal water security products, as in the case of the telecoms industry, driving a new multi-billion-dollar FMCG market. As the Malaysian and Colombian governments have, other governments and policymakers, such as yourselves, will need to play your part in encouraging and funding some of the early stages of this development. You could leave a footprint on history of clean water for all, and you could start leaving that legacy now, so that in our generation, not the next generation, but in our generation, let us move the subject of water poverty from the economics classroom to the history classroom. You could do that, and you could end water poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, very powerful presentation there. And I think, certainly the example that Michael showed, sitting in that room in 2004 over Christmas, and then seeing a problem, but finding a very innovative solution, which is now, having significant impact, not just in one country, but globally, internationally. And I think Saran also talking about the real impacts that people have. You were talking about productivity and women's empowerment and a range of other areas. And then I think Michael looking at some of the approaches. We're going to open it up for questions. We do have a few minutes, but before we do so, I'm just going to take Chair's indulgence and just ask one question in relation to technology and solutions to water. And really this is based on a report that came out just a few months ago that Saran and Michael, you may be aware of. This is the International Food Policy Research Institute report, and it talked about a number of approaches in terms of water scarcity and technology. And I just want to flag up 2 or 3 of them, and you may have thoughts and comments in terms of the approaches. One of them is the whole area of drip irrigation, looking at approaches that involve applying water directly around roots. Second area was around sprinkler irrigation, water delivered through overhead nozzles. And the third was water harvesting, irrigation that uses earth, dams, channels, and other ways of directing water towards crops. Now, they may be more traditional approaches, but I'd just be interested in your thoughts and responses to those proposals for approaching issues around water. Saran, do you want to?
Yeah, I can start. Is there? Hello? I think the issue of irrigation is huge, because when it comes to agriculture, a lot of water usage goes into agriculture. In African societies, for example, a lot of water is waste because of lack of proper and innovative irrigation systems. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there when it comes to water conservation and really looking into technologies and solutions that can help with water conservation around agriculture. Mm-hmm.
Michael?
No. I can comment.
Okay, that's fine. Great. Okay, so we'll open it up for questions now, and we do have a roving mic, or mics. So first question here at the front. Yeah. Just want to wait for the mic to come to you, just on its way. And just introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind, and then your question, please. Thank you very much. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes here for questions. Thank you.
Rob Adams from Melbourne. Michael, fantastic story. I'm just interested in the extent to which it's scalable past where you've been going, and I'm thinking particularly of sewers. We designed a building in 2006 where we tried filtering the sewer to use water. It was the first Green Star, 6-star Green Star commercial building in Australia. We've battled with the sewer because of the blocking of the membranes, mainly due to the grease that is in the sewer. Have you looked at that, or are there certain limitations to your filters?
Certainly there are limitations to the filters, and I don't profess to remove everything from water. I started off from the prospect of 99.99% of all disease through it comes while you're drinking water is from microbiological contamination. So that's where I've focused my sights. Yeah, you do face certain issues, particularly with the fats and clogging the membranes. I do come at a consultative rate. However, one of the things that I'm sure you looked at, but one of the best ways of solving that is to go back up the chain and separate out the water coming from your sewage, your toilets, from your other water. And that's a bit of pipe work, really, and it may add a little bit more to the cost of your infrastructure. But if you can do that, separate out the water before you start mixing the fats with the poo, you'll be much more likely to succeed.
Thank you very much. Great city, Melbourne, for those that...
That was free, by the way. Anything else is... Okay.
Oh, more questions? Yes, in the back over there. Just wait for the mic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ramesh Kent, Permaculture Research Institute. I guess there's a one, I think, caveat that I think often comes along with a lot of water technologies, and that I think is the mistaken idea that the technology actually fixes the problem of water scarcity. And I think historically we know that actually water is scarcity of water is actually attached to the problem of managing landscapes, and that most water scarcity problems has to do with land degradation. So I think that I guess the question that I have, and I think kind of the warning, is that I think we often make the mistake that somehow technologies are the cure for the behavior that caused the water scarcity in the first place. And I'm just wondering whether or not, I'd like to hear your comments about kind of making sure that we don't confuse those two issues. Because again, land, like probably one of the most important storages of water on the planet is actually soil. And we know that we're losing soil, and we do this periodically. Like that is actually the reason why, you know, civilizations collapse, societies collapse. So I'm just wondering, I'd like to hear your comments about that particular
Michael, do you
issue.
want to throw it? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good. I don't think that I can change people's behavior. You know, the desert was once a wonderful green place, and that was nothing to do with man. Man didn't have anything to do with changing the desert, changing the green place. No, hold on a sec. Into green spaces. Yes, we do act differently. People have moved into the cities. Why? For jobs and for resources. And we've always thought, modern thinking has thought, that infrastructure is the way that we solve these problems. So people have been coming into cities, and that does cause problems. But what I will say is that all the people alive living on the planet today are alive because they are drinking some form of water. It might not be clean, but it is some form of water. And so my philosophy is that you provide the tools to the individuals to make their own water clean. Sure, people are going to move around. People are going to move for jobs and different reasons and agricultural reasons. Yes, we are mucking around with our landscapes and water irrigation systems. And in fact, technology will help in that area. It's not too difficult, actually, to apply some modern thinking to irrigating fields and landscapes so you don't lose the soil. So you use 99% of the water going to the plant to grow it rather than evaporating or rather than going into the soil. So I do believe that technology will solve the problem. It's human behavior, cultural behavior, social behaviors that we have to answer for other things.
Sharon, do you want to? Is anything there? That's fine, okay. More questions? Yes, at the front over here.
My question is to Michael. Michael, great innovation. Feeling proud of you as a fellow British. Can you hear me? Yeah. Feeling proud of you for what you've done as a fellow British citizen. My question is in terms of affordability of the product. And the question would probably be one question with a few components. Is it targeted at the public sector, governments and things like them to provide it to the people? Or is it targeted at the private sector? And if it's targeted at the private sector, what is the cost of the different products that you have for the end user? Thank you.
Okay. The cost to you will be a lot more. But in principle, this has to start off as a collaboration. So our work in Malaysia was in collaboration with the Malaysian government, and they are providing the funding to put this technology in. Let me put that into some context, because people look at the wrong price, okay, the wrong sum. In order to raise 1 million people out of water poverty, on the island of Borneo, where you saw me on a boat, it took 3 days to get to this particular place, could you imagine the cost of traditional infrastructure to do it? Yeah? It would have broken the bank. Billions of dollars. No, this project cost millions, not billions. And we lifted 1 million people out of water poverty. So it has to start at a government level and help with government subsidies. However, when the mobile phone industry came along, before that was the telecoms industry. And we decided that it was great that everyone should communicate. So what do? We taxed the people, we raised money, we dug up roads, we put copper wire down the roads so that people could have communication. Now, 25 years ago, we thought that was the solution. And we thought, you know, wouldn't it be great if everyone had a copper wire in their home? Do you think it's conceivable that a Masai Mara warrior is going to have a bit of copper wire into his hut? No. Have they got mobile phones? Yes, they have. Did the government give them the mobile phone? No, they didn't. They went and bought it with their own money because they saw the value. It's my proposition, and I put it to you, that 100 years ago, governments were not responsible for providing water. Indeed, in the UAE,
Only in the 1960s did the government start to get involved in providing water for its people. People always used to provide their own water. And I believe they will go back to providing their own water because technology leapfrogs the need for these prohibitively expensive systems. So it's going to become an FMCG model. And so the cost of these products will become consumer items. We'll pick them up like candles and light bulbs in the shops. I'll get back down now. Thank you.
Just one question there at the back, the lady. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah Hope Smith with City Repair, United States. I'm curious about the technology. I know when I go camping and I use water treatment, we talk about micron filters, and I know reverse osmosis, and there's been a lot of different things. So can you tell us a little bit about the technology that you're using and
Sure.
how it does the full spectrum of organisms and everything?
Sure. So the smallest bacteria is about 200 nanometers. And that's your microfiltration that most people tend to refer to. The smallest virus is about 25 nanometers. And people argue whether it's a living thing or not, but let's just assume it is. That's the smallest living thing. The filters in Lifesaver are 15 nanometers. So nothing gets through from an elephant to a virus. But it still lets the goodness salts through, so the calciums and the magnesiums and other things. And if you want to mitigate the risk of, if you think there's high levels of nitrogen in the soil, then we can put a carbon filter in there that will help with that. But that isn't the thing that's going to kill you.
Thank you.
Just any final comments before we close from either of you? I mean, Mike, you've just been...
No, just to reiterate that, as Michael said, we can solve water poverty in our lifetime, and there are technologies out there that are appropriate to different communities and different countries.
Okay, Michael, any final comments?
Yeah, it's not good enough that I get angry about the problem. You all need to get angry, and you all need to do something. As the last speaker said about viruses, it's no good thinking someone else is going to solve this problem. If you're in a position that you can do something about it, whether it's money, whether it's access, whether it's infrastructure, you need to do it because it's incumbent upon all of us for humanity to end water poverty. And I've shown you how we can do it. It's not difficult, and it's not going to cost $1 trillion. In many countries, such as the country you come from, for a few miles of road, the cost of a few miles of road, we can solve water poverty in a country. So I put it back to you. You guys, you girls, are the people who have to end water poverty, and you have to take some action. Because I can't do it my own, and sure as hell, Sarah and I can't do it on our own. But you can. You can.
Michael and Sarah, thank you very much for a fascinating session. Fascinating. Anybody wants to try the water, they can come up and try.
Yeah, please do. If you want to have a sip, please do.
Thank you very much. Thank you.